I still remember the exact moment my heart cracked. Not from an argument, not from some dramatic betrayal, but from something so small, so insignificant to anyone else, that it shouldn't have hurt this much. But it did. It was a Sunday afternoon. The kind where the sun filters through the living room blinds, casting golden slants of light across the floor. Our son, Noah, was barely 4 years old at the time. Still small, still filled with the kind of wonder that only children have before the world teaches them otherwise. He had been playing with his toy trucks, those cheap plastic ones that made too much noise but somehow became his entire world. I was sitting on the couch, watching him, my hands resting on my growing stomach. I was 5 months pregnant with our second child then. A little girl. And then it happened. Hey you! Welcome to Cupidoops, where love and logic are officially divorced, and chaos has full custody. Like and subscribe. Chaos begins. Noah dropped his truck, his tiny hands gripping the coffee table as he pulled himself up. He turned to look at his father, Ethan, who had just walked in from the kitchen. His face lit up, the way it always did when he saw him. Daddy! Noah's voice was bright, expectant, full of pure love. Look what I made. He held up a mismatched Lego tower, beaming with pride, his chubby cheeks flushed with excitement. For a moment, Ethan didn't react. He just stood there, his eyes flicking from Noah to me, and then back to Noah again. And then he sighed. A slow, irritated sigh. As if our son's joy was nothing but an inconvenience. Don't call me that, Ethan said, his voice cold, distant. Just use my name. The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Noah's smile faltered. His little hands lowered the toy, confusion flickering across his face. But, you're my daddy. His voice was smaller now. Unsure. I sat up straight. Ethan. My voice was sharp. Warning. He barely glanced at me. He doesn't need to call me that. He turned back toward the kitchen, grabbing his phone from the counter, scrolling as if nothing had happened. As if he hadn't just crushed his own child. I looked back at Noah. His tiny fingers tightened around his toy, his lower lip trembling slightly. But then, he did what all children do. He adjusted. He swallowed down his hurt, pushed down his confusion, and forced a small nod. Okay, Ethan. That was the moment. That was the exact second I felt something inside me shatter. Not just for me, but for my son. For the first time, I saw it clearly. Ethan didn't want to be a father. Not really. He was here, physically present, but emotionally? He had already checked out. I should have said something then. I should have grabbed Noah, held him close, told him he was loved, that his father's issues had nothing to do with him. But instead, I just sat there, frozen, feeling my chest tighten as I watched my little boy learn his first real lesson about rejection. Noah never called him Daddy again. At first, I thought maybe Ethan had just been in a bad mood that day. That maybe I could talk to him, get him to understand how much his words had hurt Noah. But I never got the chance. Ethan worked late. He avoided conversations. When I tried to bring it up, he brushed me off. You're overreacting. He'll be fine. I don't want to talk about this. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. And then one night, as I was tucking Noah into bed, he looked up at me with those wide, innocent eyes and asked, Mommy, does Ethan love me? My throat tightened. What do you say to that? Because I couldn't lie to him. I couldn't tell him, of course he does, baby, when I wasn't even sure anymore. So I did the only thing I could do. I held him. I kissed his forehead. And I whispered, I love you, Noah. I love you more than anything in this world. Because if Ethan wouldn't love him the way he deserved, then I would. Looking back, I think that moment was the first crack in our marriage. It wasn't the worst thing Ethan ever did. Not by a long shot. But it was the first time I stopped seeing him as my husband and started seeing him for what he really was. A man who never wanted this life. And maybe I had been too blind, too desperate to hold on to something that was already slipping through my fingers. But I didn't know then what I know now. I didn't know that this was just the beginning. That soon, I'd find out about the other woman. That soon, he'd pack his bags and walk away without looking back. That soon, our children would stop asking about him altogether. I didn't know that one day, he'd come back, begging. And I didn't know that when that day came, I wouldn't feel a single ounce of pain. Not sadness. Not anger. Nothing. Because by then, he would already be a stranger. Chapter 2. People think broken marriages are full of loud fights. Screaming, shattered plates, slamming doors. But no one talks about the marriages that die in silence. No arguments. No yelling. Just two people drifting further apart, trapped in the same house but living separate lives. And that's exactly what my marriage had become. A quiet, suffocating emptiness. Ethan and I hadn't always been like this. There was a time when I felt wanted, when I could still see love in his eyes. But somewhere along the way, it faded. At first, I told myself it was normal. People change. Marriages go through rough patches. It happens. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. Because love doesn't just vanish. A man doesn't just stop showing up for the family he once wanted. Unless his heart is no longer in it. And Ethan's heart hadn't been in this marriage for a long time. Mornings used to be ours. A sacred time before the chaos of the day began. We used to wake up together, tangled beneath the sheets, whispering about nonsense before dragging ourselves out of bed. Now, I woke up to emptiness. Ethan's side of the bed was always cold, the sheets barely disturbed. Proof that he either left early or never came to bed at all. I'd hear the shower running, the sound of the bathroom door clicking shut. By the time I got up, he was already in the kitchen, dressed for work, scrolling through his phone. Most days, he didn't even say good morning. Just a brief glance in my direction, a sip of coffee, and then he was gone, out the door before the kids could even ask for a hug. Noah was only 4, but he understood more than I wanted him to. He stopped calling Ethan Dad after that first rejection. But he still tried at first. He'd waddle up to Ethan, holding up a crayon drawing, his little face full of hope. Ethan, look what I made. Not Daddy. Not Papa. Just Ethan. It hurt me every single time. Ethan barely looked up from his phone. Maybe he'd glance at the picture. Maybe he wouldn't. But his response was always the same. A short nod. A distracted, nice buddy. And that was it. No real praise. No warmth. Just an empty acknowledgement before he went back to whatever was more important than his son. I watched Noah's little shoulders drop. I watched him stop expecting anything from his father. And that shattered me. Because children shouldn't have to learn how to lower their expectations of love. I used to think that parenting was a partnership. That raising kids meant being a team. But how do you play as a team when your partner refuses to show up for the game? Ethan was a father by title only. I did it all. Bath time, bedtime stories, scraped knees, nightmares. Ethan didn't even know what size clothes our kids wore. When Lily was born, he showed up at the hospital, stayed for an hour, and then left before she even opened her eyes. I was still in my hospital gown, stitches aching, exhausted, our newborn wrapped in my arms, and he just left. Work call, he had said. I'll be back soon. I nodded, too tired to argue. But he didn't come back. Not that night. Not until the next morning. No flowers. No soft "you did great." No kiss on the forehead. Just a muttered, "How are you feeling?" as he checked his phone. And I knew. I was in this alone. There was a time when I used to wait for him. I'd sit by the window, watching the driveway, hoping that tonight would be different. But hope is exhausting. And when Ethan started coming home later and later, I stopped waiting. He always had an excuse. Late meeting. Traffic was bad. Don't wait up. And I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that the man I married wasn't lying to me. But then, I started noticing the little things. The scent of a perfume I didn't wear. The faint trace of lipstick on his shirt. The way he always turned his phone screen away when I walked past. Suspicion grew like a tight vine wrapping around my lungs. Tightening. Suffocating. Because deep down I already knew. I already knew the truth. And soon I'd have proof. Chapter 3. There are moments in life that break you. Not the kind that make you cry for a few hours and then move on. No, the kind that split you open, shatter something deep inside you, and leave you bleeding with no way to stitch yourself back together. This was one of those moments. It was nearly midnight when I heard the door creak open. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Ethan hadn't been coming home this late. Lately, he didn't even bother pretending to make it home before 2 or 3 in the morning. But then, The unmistakable clatter of keys hitting the floor made me sit up in bed. I got up, heart pounding, and walked to the living room. And there he was. Drunk. He was leaning against the wall, struggling to take off his shoes, his tie hanging loosely around his neck. His shirt, one of his best ones, the one he never wore to normal office meetings, was wrinkled, slightly unbuttoned, and lipstick. A deep red stain just below the collar. My stomach turned. I clenched my hands into fists, trying to steady myself. But before I could say anything, he mumbled. A name. Not mine. Hers. He sighed and leaned his head back against the wall. Sophia. The air left my lungs. The world spun beneath my feet. I felt like I was suffocating, like the room had suddenly grown smaller, closing in on me. Sophia. Not just a random name. No. Sophia was his ex. The woman he had loved before me. The one who left him because she wanted a more exciting life than being with someone like him. The one I thought he had moved on from. I felt my legs weaken, my body trembling as I stepped closer. What did you say? My voice came out hoarse, barely above a whisper. But he didn't even hear me. He just chuckled drunkenly, eyes still closed, and whispered again. Sophia. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him, wake him up, force him to see me. But I didn't. Instead, I took a step back. And then another. And another. Until I was standing in the doorway, staring at the man I had built a life with. A man who was dreaming about someone else even while standing inside the home we built together. The next morning, Ethan acted like nothing had happened. He took a shower, dressed up, and muttered something about having an early meeting. I just nodded. I didn't say a word. I waited until he left, until the house was quiet. Then I went through his things. Not because I wanted to be one of those wives who snooped, but because I needed to know. Because somewhere deep inside me, I already knew the answer. And it didn't take long to find. Hotel receipts. Credit card statements. Late-night reservations at fancy restaurants. Ones we had never been to together. Text messages. I picked up his work phone and typed in the first name that came to my mind. Sophia. And there it was. Message after message. I miss you. Last night was amazing. I can't wait to see you again. She doesn't mean anything to me anymore. It's always been you. I read them over and over again, as if staring at the words would make them change. But they didn't. They stayed the same. And with each word, each sentence, my heart cracked further and further. Until it finally broke. I waited until that evening. I sat in the living room, hands gripping the receipts, the phone, the undeniable proof of his betrayal. When Ethan walked in, he barely looked at me. He loosened his tie, exhaled like he had a long day, and walked toward the kitchen. I followed. Who is she? He froze. For a moment, he didn't turn around. Then slowly he faced me. His eyes flicked down to the papers in my hands, and for the first time in a long time, I saw something in his expression. Not guilt. Not shame. Relief. Like he had been waiting for this. Like he wanted to be caught. You went through my things? He asked, voice eerily calm. I clenched my jaw. Don't turn this around on me. Who is she? A slow exhale. A tired look. And then the final blow. I never wanted this life. Silence. My hands trembled, my breath catching in my throat. What? Ethan ran a hand through his hair, looking more exhausted than ever. You forced me into being a father. I can't do this anymore. And just like that, everything shattered. Everything I held on to, asterisk asterisk the hope, the belief that maybe he still cared, maybe we could fix this, asterisk asterisk collapsed in an instant. I forced a laugh, but it came out broken. Forced you. I took a step closer, gripping the papers so tightly they crumpled. You proposed to me. You told me you wanted a family. You. I thought I did. He cut in, voice flat. But I don't. I haven't for a long time. And that was when I knew. He was already gone. Had been for years. Ethan didn't even fight. He didn't beg for forgiveness. Didn't try to explain. Didn't make excuses. He just packed a bag. I stood frozen in the doorway, watching him move around our bedroom like he was just going on a business trip. Like he wasn't walking away from his wife and kids. Noah and Lily were in their rooms, unaware that their father was about to disappear from their lives. And the worst part? He didn't even say goodbye. Not to them. Not to me. Just grabbed his suitcase, walked past me, and left. No hesitation. No regret. And I stood there, staring at the closed door, trying to breathe. But how do you breathe when your entire world just walked out on you? Chapter 4. The silence in the house was deafening. It wasn't the peaceful kind of silence. It was the kind that suffocated you. The kind that pressed into your chest, made the walls feel like they were closing in. It had been weeks since Ethan left. And in those weeks, something inside Noah changed. He stopped asking. He stopped waiting. And somehow that hurt even more. The first night without Ethan, Noah sat by the front door. His small hands gripped the edge of his pajama shirt, his feet curled under him, eyes glued to the door as if willing it to open. I tried to carry him to bed. He fought me. "Daddy's coming," he insisted, voice trembling. I didn't know what to say. So I didn't say anything. I just held him, rocking him gently, as his tiny body shook with exhaustion. Hours passed. The door never opened. And eventually, Noah fell asleep in my arms, still waiting. Noah had always been the kind of child who wanted to be noticed. Not by me. By him. By Ethan. Even though Ethan had never played with him, never helped with his homework, never even acknowledged the drawings he would hold up with so much excitement, Noah kept trying. I'll never forget the day he ran up to Ethan with a tiny toy car, eyes shining with hope. "Look, Daddy. I made it go fast. Watch." Ethan barely glanced at him. Didn't even pause from checking his phone. "Not now, Noah." The light in my son's eyes dimmed. But he still tried again. And again. And again. Until the night Ethan walked out the door for good. Noah stopped trying after that. He didn't cry. He didn't throw tantrums. He just became quiet. Lily was still too little to understand what was happening. She couldn't form words yet. But she felt things. She felt it when Noah stopped talking. She felt it when I sat at the dinner table, forcing myself to eat so they wouldn't see me breaking. She would crawl into my lap, tiny fingers curling into my shirt, pressing her cheek against my chest. A silent comfort. A reminder that even in the darkest moments, I wasn't alone. But Ethan had never held her like that. Never rocked her to sleep. Never reached for her tiny hands or whispered to her at night. And she knew it. Even without words, she knew. Because she never searched for him. Not once. At first, Noah asked every day. "When's Daddy coming home? Did he call? Maybe he's just busy?" I lied. I lied because how do you tell a 5-year-old that his father never wanted him? But as the days turned to weeks, Noah stopped asking. He stopped checking the door. Stopped looking at his old drawings of our family. Stopped talking about him altogether. And one night as I was tucking him in, he whispered something so small, so broken, that it nearly shattered me. "Daddy doesn't love me, does he?" I froze. The words stole the air from my lungs. He wasn't even crying. He said it like it was a fact. Like he had already accepted it. And somehow, that made it even worse. I wanted to tell him he was wrong. I wanted to say, "Of course Daddy loves you." But I couldn't. Because I would be lying. So I just pulled him close, pressing my lips to his forehead, whispering the only thing I could. "I love you, baby." He didn't say anything back. Just curled up, holding onto my hand, like he was afraid I'd leave too. Bills piled up. I took extra shifts. I went to school meetings alone, watching other fathers ruffle their kids' hair, laugh with them, be there. I swallowed the lump in my throat and focused on surviving. Every day was a battle. Not just against the loneliness. Not just against the exhaustion. But against the fear. Fear that I wasn't enough. That no matter how much love I gave Noah and Lily, it would never be enough to fill the hole Ethan left behind. That one day, Noah would blame me for not being able to keep his father. That Lily would never know what it was like to be held by a father who loved her. It was terrifying. But I didn't have the luxury of breaking down. Because I was all they had. So I kept going. Even when it hurt. Even when I wanted to scream. Even when I wanted to hate Ethan so much it burned through my veins. I kept going. It happened on a night when exhaustion had nearly swallowed me whole. I had just finished washing the dishes, my back aching, my body begging for sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at a stack of unpaid bills, pressing my fingers to my temple. Then, tiny arms wrapped around my waist. I looked down. Noah stood beside me, face buried in my side. "Mommy." My throat tightened. "Yeah, baby." He squeezed me tighter. "You don't have to be sad." Tears burned my eyes. "I'm not sad." He pulled back just enough to look at me, his small hands cupping my cheeks. "It's okay, Mommy. I love you." A choked laugh slipped from my lips. And suddenly, I wasn't drowning anymore. I pulled him into my arms, holding him close, pressing my face into his soft curls. "I love you more, my sweet boy." In that moment I knew. We were going to be okay. It wouldn't be easy. It would take time. But we would heal. Because in the end, we still had each other. And that was enough. Chapter 5. Years passed. I became someone I never thought I could be. Not just a woman who survived. A woman who thrived. But nothing about this journey was simple. Because while I was rising, my son was suffering. It started subtly. At first, Noah was quieter than usual. I thought maybe it was just one of those phases kids go through. But then, I started noticing the small things. The way he hesitated before school, dragging his feet as if walking into something he dreaded. The way he flinched when I asked how his day went, like he was bracing himself for something painful. And then one day it happened. Noah came home with bruises on his arms. I was washing dishes when I saw him enter the house, his little backpack hanging off his shoulders. Something felt off. His usual, soft "Mom, I'm home" was missing. Instead, he walked past me quickly, his head down, making his way to his room. But then I saw it. Dark, ugly bruises on his arms. I dropped the dish into the sink and rushed after him. "Noah," I called. "Come here, sweetheart." He froze in his tracks, but he didn't turn around. Gently, I kneeled and placed a hand on his shoulder. His little body was trembling. "Noah," I whispered, my voice shaking. "What happened?" For a long moment, he was silent. Then in a voice so small, so broken, he whispered, "They said I don't have a dad. That I'm not normal." My breath caught in my throat. A sharp pain stabbed through my chest. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to stay steady. "What did they do?" I asked softly. He sniffled. "They pushed me. Called me names. One of them said I was worthless." I clenched my jaw. How could children be so cruel? But I knew the answer. Children repeated what they heard at home. And somewhere, in someone's house, Ethan's abandonment had become a joke at our expense. I pulled Noah into my arms, hating that I couldn't shield him from this. Hating that Ethan's absence was still hurting us. "I'm sorry, baby," I whispered against his hair. "I'm so sorry." He sniffled, gripping my shirt like I was the only thing keeping him together. But then he pulled away. And what he said next shattered me all over again. "Mom, do you think, if I was better, maybe he would have stayed?" Tears burned in my eyes. I cupped his face, forcing him to look at me. "Noah, no." My voice was firm, but my heart was breaking. "You are perfect just the way you are. This is not your fault. Do you hear me?" He hesitated, then gave me a small nod. But deep down I knew, he still wondered. That night, after I tucked Noah into bed, I sat in my room and let myself cry. I cried for him. For Lily. For all the times I had to be both mother and father. But I wasn't just mourning the past. I was making a decision. We weren't going to be victims of Ethan's abandonment. We weren't going to live under the shadow of his absence. We were going to rise. And so, I worked harder. I fought for every promotion, took every opportunity, and built a future where my kids would never feel less than. Because we weren't missing anything. We were whole. Just the three of us. Years later, I became the woman Ethan never believed I could be. A top executive. A businesswoman. A mother who raised strong, independent, brilliant children. And while I was soaring, Ethan was sinking. Because the life he threw us away for? The one he betrayed us for? It was crumbling. His mistress, the woman whose name he mumbled in his sleep, cheated on him. And not just once. Multiple times. And when she got bored, she left. Just like he left us. And that was just the beginning of his downfall. He lost his job, burned through his savings. And for the first time in his life, he had nothing. One night, in some run-down bar, drowning in whiskey, he saw it. A news segment flashing across the TV. A feature on me. The camera zoomed in as I stood at a press event, smiling, confident, successful. And beside me? Noah and Lily. Noah, now a teenager, standing tall, strong. No longer that little boy looking for approval from a father who never cared. Lily, a bright-eyed little girl, happy and loved. And in that moment, Ethan finally understood. He threw away everything. And now, he had nothing. No wife. No children. No future. Just regret. But here's the thing about regret. It doesn't bring back the past. It doesn't fix what's broken. And it sure as hell doesn't mean I'll ever let him back in. Because the woman he abandoned? She doesn't exist anymore. And the woman I am now? She doesn't need him. She never did. She never will. Chapter 6. I never expected to see him again. Not after all these years. Not after everything he put us through. But there he was, standing at my doorstep. Ethan. The man who once promised me forever. The man who left without hesitation, without a second glance. The man who abandoned his children. I felt my breath catch in my throat as I took in his appearance. The sharp, confident man I once knew was gone. This Ethan looked hollow. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair unkempt, streaks of gray scattered through the once perfectly styled strands. His eyes, which had always held arrogance, now held something else. Desperation. I should have slammed the door in his face. I should have let him rot in the grave he dug for himself. But then, his voice came low and hoarse. I just want to see my kids. I felt something deep inside me twist. For years, Noah had ached for a father who never looked his way. For years, I had wiped away my son's tears, whispering lies I wished were true. He's just busy, sweetheart. He loves you. He'll come back one day. But Ethan never came back. And now he was here, asking to see the children he never cared about? My grip on the door tightened. I turned my head slightly and called out, Noah, Lily, come here for a second. I heard the soft patter of footsteps before Noah appeared beside me. At 13, my son had grown taller, leaner. He had his father's height, but none of his weakness. Lily, now 8, followed, her big brown eyes filled with curiosity. The second they saw him, they didn't react. Not a flicker of recognition. Not a single emotion. Lily tilted her head. Who is this? She asked, looking up at me. Ethan's face drained of all color. His lips parted, his hands slightly trembling at his sides. I saw the way he struggled to force out his next words. He forced a weak, shaky smile. I'm your father. Noah, my strong, unshakable boy, stared at him. Then in a voice so cold, so calm that it sent chills down even my spine, he said, No, you're not. Ethan visibly recoiled. Noah, he croaked. I know I've been gone, but... You left. Noah cut him off, his voice unwavering. Ethan opened his mouth, but no words came out. You left before I even got to know what having a father felt like. Lily blinked up at me and tugged on my sleeve. Mommy, can we go inside now? Ethan's entire body stiffened. I saw it then, the moment the reality truly hit him. His daughter didn't even know who he was. I looked at my children, the two resilient, unbreakable souls standing beside me, and I made my decision. I placed a hand on Noah's back. Go ahead, I said gently. Dinner's almost ready. Lily skipped inside first. Noah hesitated. Just for a second. Then, without another word, he turned his back on Ethan. And walked away. Just like Ethan once did to us. Chapter 7. I should have left. I should have gone inside, locked the door, and never looked back. But something inside me needed closure. I turned to Ethan, who stood frozen in place. His hands clenched into fists, his jaw tight. His chest rose and fell with shaky, uneven breaths. Then he whispered, Please. The word was so quiet, I almost didn't hear it. Please, he said again, looking at me with utter desperation. Just let me in. I made mistakes, but I want to fix them. I let out a short, sharp laugh. Fix them, I repeated. Ethan, you don't get to walk back in like nothing happened. His lips pressed into a thin line. I lost my job, he admitted. And she left me. There it was. The truth. He wasn't here for Noah. He wasn't here for Lily. He was here because he had nothing else left. I took a slow, deep breath. You don't understand, Ethan tried again. No, I cut him off. You don't understand. I stepped closer, looking him straight in the eye. Your punishment isn't losing me. His lips parted, like he wanted to argue. I let the silence stretch before delivering the final blow. Your punishment is being erased from your own children's lives. His entire body sagged. You're not their father, Ethan, I whispered. You're just a stranger. A pained noise left his throat. He shook his head. No. You did this, I said, voice steady. Now live with it. Then, I turned away. And this time, I didn't look back. Chapter 8. I closed the door. Locked it. And that was it. No tears. No second guessing. No lingering pain. Just silence. 4 years, I had dreamed of this moment. I thought I would cry. I thought I would feel satisfaction. But the truth? I just felt free. Ethan had always been my biggest weight. The burden I carried. The wound I tried to heal. But as I stood in my warm, bright home, with the sound of my children's laughter drifting from the kitchen, I realized something. That burden? That wound? It didn't exist anymore. I was whole. I was free. I inhaled deeply, exhaling all the remnants of the past I had unknowingly held onto. Then, for the first time in years, I smiled. And Ethan? He could spend the rest of his life regretting this moment. But he would never get another chance. Not with me. Not with Noah. Not with Lily. Because this time, we were the ones who walked away. And we were never looking back. Chapter 9. The past was behind us. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. Ethan's presence, his choices, his betrayal. None of it mattered anymore. Because we had already won. We had built something beautiful. Something whole. Something he would never be part of. But Ethan? He didn't accept his fate easily. At first, it was the usual, lingering outside our house, standing at a distance like a pathetic shadow. Then, when that didn't work, he became bolder. He showed up at Noah's school. The first time, Noah told me about it over dinner, pushing his food around on his plate. There was this man outside the gate today, he said, voice carefully neutral. He was just watching. My stomach twisted. I didn't have to ask who. The second time, Ethan actually tried to approach Noah, stopping him as he left the school grounds. You've grown so much, Ethan had said, his voice heavy with false regret. I miss you, son. Noah had stared at him for a long moment before replying with an emotionless, I don't know you. Then he had walked away. That night, as Noah told me what had happened, I saw it, the lack of pain in his expression, the unshaken resolve in his eyes. He wasn't scared. He wasn't sad. He was indifferent. And that was Ethan's real punishment. Ethan didn't stop there. When he couldn't get through to Noah, he tried Lily. She was too young to understand, only barely starting to know what's happening. But Ethan didn't care. One afternoon, as I picked her up from school, a teacher pulled me aside, her face worried. There was a man outside the playground fence today, she said cautiously. He was watching Lily. My blood ran cold. Did he speak to her? I asked, my voice sharp. No, the teacher reassured me quickly. But it looked like he wanted to. I thanked her, scooped Lily into my arms, and held her tighter than ever. Ethan was desperate. He had lost everything, and now, he wanted to use guilt to claw his way back in. But it was too late. Much, much too late. That night, I didn't wait. I found Ethan. It wasn't hard. He had become a shadow of the man he once was. He lived in a dingy motel on the outskirts of town, a far cry from the grand home we once shared. When he opened the door and saw me standing there, his eyes lit up with something I couldn't quite name. Hope? Desperation? I didn't care. I didn't even step inside. I simply looked him in the eye and said, "Stay away from my children." He opened his mouth, but I didn't let him speak. "I mean it, Ethan. You lost the right to be in their lives the moment you walked out that door. You don't get to show up now and pretend you care. You don't get to haunt them like some tragic ghost. They don't need you. They don't even remember you." His face twisted, pain flickering across his features. Good. I wanted him to feel it. Because I had felt it once too. I turned and walked away, my heart steady. Ethan didn't follow me. And from that moment on, he never showed up again. Months passed. The whispers about Ethan faded. I heard he was still jobless, still struggling, still drinking himself into oblivion. But I never looked for him. Because we had moved on. Noah excelled in school. He wasn't the shy, hesitant boy who once longed for his father's approval. He was strong, confident, unshakable. The same boys who once mocked him for not having a dad? They didn't dare speak to him now. Because Noah had grown into someone who knew his worth. And Lily? My little sunshine had blossomed. She danced, she laughed, she dreamed, without shadows weighing her down. She never once asked about Ethan. And I never reminded her. We were happy. We were free. We were finally living. One evening, as I sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, Noah joined me. He was taller now, almost as tall as me. His voice had deepened. His shoulders had broadened. But when he looked at me, I still saw my baby boy. "I heard about him today," he said, staring at the horizon. I didn't need to ask who he meant. I simply waited. "He's not doing well," Noah continued. I think he wanted me to hear about it. Maybe he thought I'd feel bad. I turned to my son, my beautiful resilient boy, and asked, "Do you?" Noah exhaled. Then in a voice so steady, so sure, he said, "No." And that was it. That was the closure. I reached for his hand, giving it a small squeeze. Noah squeezed back. And we sat there, mother and son, watching the sky change colors, feeling nothing but peace. This wasn't just a story about heartbreak. It was a story about survival. About healing. About walking away and never looking back. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't anger. It's thriving. It's living well. It's looking at the past and realizing it has no power over you anymore. And as for Ethan, his punishment wasn't losing us. His punishment was knowing that we never needed him to begin with. And we never would. The end. Comment, like, and subscribe.